Ever find yourself scrolling through like a million movies or shows and just completely overwhelmed? Like you can't even decide.
Totally.
Or maybe you're at the bookstore facing down this wall of bestsellers and you're just like, how did this book make it?
Happens to the best of us.
If you've ever felt that way, well then you, my friend, get to dive right into the heart of fame today with us.
Oh, yeah. Buckle
We're
up.
going deep into How to Become Famous, a book by Cass Sunstein, and we're going to figure out what makes some names, echo through history,
Great.
and some just kind of fade away.
Totally.
So we're on a mission, basically, to crack the code of fame.
All right. I'm game.
Is it just about being the best, or is there, like, a secret sauce, a sprinkle of luck,
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? And Sunstein, he kind of throws a wrench in that whole best of the best idea right off the bat.
Okay, how so?
Well, he digs into this thing. He calls it selection on the dependent variable. Right. Sounds very academic, I know, but it's really not that complex. It basically means we look at the winners, the stars, the famous ones.
The Beatles, the Beyoncés, that kind of thing?
Exactly. And we try to figure out what they all have in common, like it's some magic formula, but...
But we're missing a big part of the picture.
Exactly. We're not looking at the people who had the same talent, the same drive, but never quite broke through.
So, like, we assume everyone in a black turtleneck is a visionary because of Steve Jobs.
Uh-huh. Precisely.
What about all the other turtleneck wearers who just, like, blend into the background?
Exactly. And that's the problem with only studying success. We miss all those other stories, the ones that didn't lead to fame and fortune, and maybe those stories could teach us just as much, if not more.
That is a really good point. Okay, so to bring this all to life a little bit, Sunstein tells this really fascinating story about a woman named Connie Converse,
Oh, yeah, Connie Converse, what a story.
a folk singer from the 1950s, crazy talented. I mean, she even performed on TV with Walter Cronkite. Yeah. But here's the thing, despite her talent, despite the TV spot, she never really hit it big during her lifetime. Like it was just,
Bad timing.
yeah, like she was born in the wrong decade.
And that's what's so compelling about Sunstein's argument, right? It's not just talent, it's timing, it's luck. It's those chance encounters that can make or break a career. Like imagine if Converse had been playing in Greenwich Village a few years later,
Yeah.
bumping elbows with, say, Bob Dylan. Would we even know his name today without her influence?
Wow. That is wild to think about.
It really makes you wonder about all the what-ifs on the road to fame.
It really does. And you know what else is wild?
What's that?
So Connie Converse is an incredibly talented musician. She eventually just vanished, completely gone. No one knows what happened to her.
Wow, that just adds another layer to it, doesn't it? Like the mystery of her disappearance almost adds to her mystique now, even though that obviously wasn't the plan.
Exactly. And to think, it wasn't until the 2000s, when her recordings were rediscovered, that the world really got to hear her music and appreciate her talent.
It really makes you think about legacy and how it's shaped, Like sometimes it's not enough to just be good, you have to be rediscovered at the right time too.
It's like the stars have to align, the timing has to be perfect for someone to truly break through.
Exactly. It's a fascinating and often unfair process. Speaking of timing and talent, Sunstein also delves into the story of Robert Johnson, the legendary bluesman who supposedly sold his soul to the devil for his musical gift.
Oh yeah, Robert Johnson. Talk about a story that captures the imagination.
Totally. And whether you believed in the supernatural or not, there's no denying that his story has this incredible power, this blend of raw talent, and, well, let's just say, a good story never hurts. Even Bob Dylan himself was a huge admirer of Johnson's music.
Oh, absolutely. He said Johnson's music was a major inspiration for him, which I think just goes to show, even if someone isn't widely recognized in their own time, their influence can still echo through generations.
For sure.
And to give our listeners a taste of that magic, here's a little bit of Robert Johnson's haunting music. Play a brief excerpt of Robert Johnson's music.
Intense, right? To think that music, this powerful, this raw, this good, was largely unknown during Johnson's lifetime, it really does make you question everything we think we know about success, doesn't it?
It really does. It makes you wonder about all the talent that's out there, hidden in plain sight, just waiting for the right moment, the right connection to be discovered.
It's like searching for buried treasure, but instead of gold, it's like these gems of creativity and artistry.
I like that analogy, and that actually brings us to another key concept in Sunstein's book, social contagion. He argues that fame spreads much like a virus through this fascinating web of social interactions and influences. Social contagion, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds a little, I don't know, sinister maybe. But we're talking about fame here, not like a zombie apocalypse, right?
Right, exactly. It's more about how trends catch fire, how some ideas or creations seem to spread like wildfire through a population. And Sunstein, he breaks this down into these key mechanisms, these patterns we see over and over again.
Oh, okay, I like that. Like patterns, I can get behind that.
Right, so one of these patterns, one of the big ones he talks about, is what he calls informational cascades.
Informational cascades. Okay, I'm picturing like a waterfall of information. Is that close?
That's actually a pretty good visual. It's basically this idea that we tend to make decisions based on what other people are doing, especially when we're faced with like a million choices.
Oh yeah, 1,000,000%. That is like my entire online shopping experience.
Exactly. Like, have you ever bought a book just because it had a gazillion five-star reviews?
Ugh, guilty as charged, even if I hadn't even read the description.
Right. That's an informational cascade in action. We're wired to look to others for guidance, especially when we feel overwhelmed or unsure. It's like a mental shortcut, relying on the collective wisdom, or at least the collective opinion, of the crowd.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What about like those movies that everyone's buzzing about and you feel like you have to see them even if you're not even sure you'll like it?
Oh, absolutely. That's another one of Sunstein's mechanisms, what he calls reputational cascades. It's this idea that we jump on the bandwagon because we want to be part of the in-group, signal that we're in the know. It's this whole idea of social currency.
Oh, social currency. I like that. So it's not even about the movie anymore. It's about like being part of the conversation.
Exactly. It's about staying culturally relevant, being able to chime in with an opinion when everyone's talking about the latest hit show or whatever it is.
Fascinating. So we've got these informational cascades, reputational cascades. Is there anything else? Like how does something even become popular enough to set off one of these cascades in the first place?
Well, that's where network effects come in. This is the idea that the more people buy into something, the more valuable it becomes to join in.
Okay, I think I'm getting that.
Like, think about social media platforms, right? They wouldn't be nearly as influential if only a handful of people were using them. It's the power of the network, all those connections, that amplifies their reach.
Right. The more the merrier.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then you add to all of this other fascinating concept called group polarization. This is where things can get, well, a little interesting.
Okay, how so?
Well, it's this idea that when people with similar tastes or beliefs get together, they kind of feed off each other's enthusiasm, they end up hyping each other up, and their initial opinions can become, well, a bit more extreme.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's like an echo chamber effect, right?
Yeah.
You only hear from people who already agree with you, so your views just get more and more amplified.
Exactly. And this is where things can really take off in terms of fame and popularity. Think about the power of Oprah's book club, for example.
Oh, for sure.
She could basically catapult a relatively unknown author to superstardom just by recommending their book.
It's true. I remember that. Like everyone was reading whatever book Oprah was into.
Exactly. Her stamp of approval, combined with the enthusiasm of her devoted viewers, created this incredibly powerful force, this cascade effect.
Wow, that is wild to think about. Okay, so we've got these cascades, these network effects, this group polarization. It's like this perfect storm of social forces that can take something from obscurity to the top of the charts practically overnight.
Exactly. And what Sunstein really highlights is that so much of what we perceive as popular, what we're drawn to, it's often driven by these invisible forces, not necessarily inherent quality.
Right, right. So it's not always about being the best. It's about like being in the right place at the right time, tapping into the right social currents.
Precisely. And that's a really key takeaway from How to Become Famous. Sunstein isn't saying talent doesn't matter, not at all. But he's shedding light on just how much a success, especially when we're talking about fame, relies on this complex interplay of factors, many of which are completely outside of our control.
It's like riding a wave. You know, you have to catch the right one at the right moment. Even if you're the most skilled surfer in the world, if the wave isn't there, you're not going anywhere.
Exactly. And that actually brings us to another fascinating concept in the book, the zeitgeist, that intangible spirit of the times. Sunstein argues that a creation's success, it often hinges on its ability to resonate with the prevailing cultural mood. Like it has to hit at just the right moment when people are primed for that particular message or style or whatever it is.
Like Star Wars, for instance.
Yeah.
It captured something in the cultural moment, the anxieties and the longing for escapism in the post-Vietnam War era. And it became this massive phenomenon that went way beyond just like a fun space movie.
Absolutely. It tapped into something deeper, a collective yearning that resonated with audiences on a global scale. It was the right story at the right time.
Totally.
Hmm.
Or even think about how history is written and rewritten, and how our perceptions of figures from the past can change so dramatically depending on the cultural and political climate.
Absolutely. Someone who was hailed as a hero in one era might be viewed in a completely different light a generation later. Our understanding of history is fluid, it's shaped by new information and evolving social norms.
It's like we're always reinterpreting the past through the lens of the present, which is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yeah.
So we've got these invisible forces of social contagion swirling around, and then there's the zeitgeist, this ever-shifting cultural tide.
Right.
It really makes you wonder how much agency any of us really have.
Right. Like, are we really in control of our own destinies?
Yeah, especially when it comes to achieving something like lasting fame. It seems like it takes a lot more than just talent and hard work.
Absolutely. And it makes you think about how we value success, how we define it, and whether those definitions might need a little reframing in light of all these external forces at play.
It's like we're all just caught in these currents, these social and cultural forces, often without even realizing it.
Right. Like, we're all just kind of along for the ride.
Exactly. So it makes you wonder, if we can become more aware of these forces, could we actually navigate them a bit more consciously, maybe even influence them in some way?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Sunstein, he definitely seems to think it's possible. Like, he ends the book with this really thought-provoking challenge. He asks us, what if, as a culture, we actually made a conscious effort to elevate works of genuine merit? What if we could shift the balance away from pure chance and just like social pressure and towards something a bit more, I don't know, intentional?
Yeah. Yeah, like could we actually hack the system, so to speak, and give those hidden gems, those lost geniuses, a real shot at being seen and heard?
Exactly. It would definitely take a real conscious effort, a shift in our mindset for sure. But imagine a world where instead of just like blindly following the hype, we actually took the time to seek out those voices that might otherwise go unheard, to champion the books and movies and music that might not be on everyone's radar, but that speak to us on a deeper level.
I love that. It's like being a cultural detective, always on the lookout for those hidden treasures.
Yes. And maybe if we're more aware of our own biases, those subtle forces that shape our opinions and preferences, we can be more open to those unexpected discoveries.
Yeah, instead of just assuming that whatever's most popular is automatically the best, we can start to question those assumptions a little bit more, right?
Exactly. It's about being more discerning, more critical, but also more open to new experiences, to things that might challenge our preconceived notions.
It's like rewiring our brains to be more curious, more adventurous, more open to the unexpected.
That's a great way to put it. And it puts the responsibility on us as consumers of culture to be more active participants. We're not just passive recipients of whatever's thrown our way. We have the power to shape the cultural landscape.
We do. We have the power to choose what we watch, what we read, what we listen to. And by making those choices more consciously, maybe we can actually create a world where talent and quality have a fighting chance. A world where the next Connie Converse or the next Robert Johnson gets to experience the thrill of recognition while they're still around to enjoy it.
But wouldn't that be something? It's a vision worth striving for sure.
It really is. So as we wrap up our deep dive into how to become famous, I have one last question for you, dear listener. And it's something to ponder as you go about your day. Maybe encounter those endless streaming options or that overwhelming wall of books. What are some lost geniuses, some hidden gems you've encountered that you think deserve a wider audience? What's that book that you just couldn't put down? That band you discovered in a dingy basement club? That artist whose work just stopped you in your tracks? They might not have the fame, not yet at least, but they've got something special, that spark of magic. And who knows, maybe with a little nudge, a little word of mouth, we can help them find their moment in the sun. Until next time, happy exploring.